everyone, it's Jan from Jan Plans Things and welcome to my Plan With Me video for this week. I hope you guys are having a fantastic beginning to December. I'd like to welcome all my new subscribers. It seems that Christmas watercolor videos are pretty popular, so I'm hoping you guys enjoy the rest of December as well. I've just started adding a few notes onto the corners of the pages as I paint, just to show what materials I'm using. This week I'm doing a Christmas village, and I'm doing it all in watercolors, and I'm using Agallo watercolors, which are handmade from Italy, as well as Daniel Smith watercolors, which can be store-bought. I have like a Daniel Smith starter palette of around 16-17 colors. Starter as in like I built it myself. It's basically very similar to Jane Blundell's watercolor palette, except that I've also added Moonglow and a custom grey mix that I use a lot, and a purple mix as well. That's probably because of when I did a whole bunch of stars back in August. What I'm doing now in the picture is I'm using masking fluid. I'm using the synthetic brush to do masking fluid, and you can see me dipping to the right of the screen a lot, and what I'm actually doing is just washing my brush really often, because with the masking fluid, if you don't wash it often, it starts to gunk up your brush, and I find that it's completely water soluble for about 30 seconds. So I try to apply a little bit, wash the brush and do it again, and that just means that it just saves the life of the brush in the long run. I've also started using a lot more synthetic brushes, mainly because a lot of you have been asking about vegan options and for brushes, and I hadn't really even considered it before. So I've been testing out the Glacier brushes from Princeton, and I'm really enjoying them. They're really lovely, plus the handle's fun because it's see-through, and they have a really nice snap to them. I haven't managed to find a really nice fine synthetic brush yet, so I'm still using the Isabey brushes and the White Knights brushes for those in size 2 and size 4. They just come to a really nice point. I'm finding what I'm doing nowadays a lot with watercolors, just pre-shadowing everything. So you can see I've gone through and added a little bit of brown ochre to everything, especially around the peppermints and the candy canes, because I'm painting those red, so I wanted warm shadows on those. On the roofs I'm using greys because I'm anticipating kind of like snowy roofs, and then you can kind of see me block out some paler colors first. So I did the house at the front at the beginning, and I did that in the red, and I kind of did this in a mid-tone red to start off with, and then I slowly started putting in bricks, and to do those I just did simple rectangles, and not everywhere, because I find that if you paint everything in, unless you're doing a super realistic painting, it's firstly a lot of work, but secondly your brain kind of patches in everything anyway when you're looking at the image. So as long as you give an indication of that, it adds that detail without you having to do too much to it. I'm also making sure that I'm painting the front of the houses in the bright color instead of the side of the houses, mainly because I kind of want the light coming in from the sides, so that the front of the houses, which I'm using the much more punchy and strong colors, I can have those as the brightest part of the image, and they also take up the most page space. So I want to make sure that those sides are the ones that are facing me and that are the most vibrant. I'm also trying to get in the practice a lot more of mixing my own greys, using an ultramarine and a yellow ochre, or like a Daniel Smith Goethite colour, so that it's easier to tint. When you mix your own greys, I can mix it through a little bit of the red in it as well, and it isn't muddy like if you use blacks, and by doing that it makes it easier to darken the image if you need to. So what I'm doing now is I'm blocking out a large amount of colours. I'm trying to stick to a similar tone and colour palette. I find that if you're using a few too many colors, you should test that on the side first, but I try to keep everything within the same color family. So I'm using warm colors this time around, so warm reds, warm browns, and then the only contrasting color I have will be green for the Christmas trees. I find that if I'm using colors that are far too bright and far too clashy, it requires a little bit too much color mixing to get it right. Sometimes when you're using just the colors straight out of the pan, you'll find that they are very contrasty, and the main reason for that is that most of the times those sets are designed for mixing. So I'm trying to tint all of my colours with colours adjacent to it, so it looks more like a colour family than just doing it all with colours straight out of the pan. I'm kind of really shocked as well because I've really only been using watercolors probably for about a year now, and it's mostly due to my bullet journal, and it's just amazing how constant practice means you can improve quite a bit. There's a lot that I've learnt over the year, and mostly it's to do with color mixing and just how to do lights and shadows. I'm still learning how to build up shadows so I can get more contrast, and I'm starting to become quite happy with my progress and also how much I've learned. So I'm really looking forward to next year as well, just building on those skills and continuing to challenge myself. So obviously at this point you guys have probably noticed this is more of like a candy village than a Christmas village, but it's Christmas themed candy. That's my saving grace here. So amongst the buildings of this little Christmas village, where trees and bushes would normally be, I've put giant peppermints, mainly because I find peppermints really, really excellent to draw. They're nice and bright, they're so vibrant, and they're really great for spreads like this, and they really pop, and they're easy to do. So with the peppermint, all you basically need to do is draw a circle, do a pinwheel design on it. So that's like four swishes on it, and then all for shading, all you really need to do is add that brown around the edge at the beginning to add the tone, and then use a nice bright red to do it afterwards. So I'm really enjoying painting peppermints actually this year. I'm also doing a giant stocking because, you know, Christmas, why not? You can have a bit of fun with it. I'm using reds and golds for the stocking, and I've got my favourite helper sitting inside the stocking as well. You don't have to draw a cat for you guys. You could probably draw Santa. Not everyone is a crazy cat lady, so feel free. I've been loving the recreations of my snow globes and the spreads that I've been doing so far. Please keep tagging me and sending them into me, because I just love seeing them. And it makes me really happy, and it even makes me happier when some of you guys draw Humphrey as well. He probably should be real proud of himself that he has so much fan art of him. Well, it's my fan art, and then you guys, how do you put this? You guys put up with my cat obsession. Anyway. So thank you. At this point I decided that I would leave the roofs white. Originally I was thinking maybe I was going to do a green, but I was worried that the colours would clash a little bit too much and the white would look a little bit more like a wintry Christmas village. The plus side of that though is it means that the pre-shading that I did before is the actual shading now, so I don't have to shade any more of the roof. So that's always a positive. You always look for stuff like that. What I'm doing now is I'm using the browns and the grey that I mixed previously to darken the colours, and that's mainly just to do a few of the shadows directly adjacent to the pieces. So when you're looking at an object, it tends to be directly underneath it is where the darkest shadow is, and when you're painting you can add that tiny bit of detail around it, and that really helps add to the depth of the overall image. What I'm doing now is I'm using like a deep red colour from Agallo Colours. It's called Moralone, I think, and I'm using that to paint my peppermints. And because I did the pre-shading already with the brown, all I need to do is basically colour in. So I do love drawing the peppermints. So I'm just going through and doing that. And at the beginning, I had originally planned to have the pinwheel peppermints in the bright red colour. And then big car just drove past. And then I'll have the giant swirly peppermint in the green color. But at this point, I'm kind of really loving on the browns and the reds. So I was just like, maybe I'll just keep them all red. So I do tend to change my mind as I go along, adjusting to how it looks as I colour. So I also decided to add a few candy cane sticks to the top of the village. So I'm having the little sticks come out of the village, and they're holding up little stars, probably made of gold or gingerbread, and then I can use those as the date bubbles for this week, instead of having like a big black circle like I normally do. I'm just trying to integrate it more into the design, and I think it'll look okay. Plus, adding gold is always better, I think. It's probably my motto. I'm going to stick with that. More sparkles is better. And I'm trying to also think of other ways to use the whole bean gold, because it actually has little gold glitter particles in it, but the Finetech one is more foily. So I might just start mixing it in a couple of paints and seeing how that works. I think I might end up with just a full page of glitter by the end of this month. Maybe. I'll try not to. But anyways, I have these little candy cane sticks holding up my little stars. I'm mixing them with chocolate sticks which are brown, because I was a little bit worried that I might have overdone the amount of stripes in this picture, combined with like the candy canes and the peppermints. So I've just tried to calm that down a little bit. These swirly peppermints are a little bit like Danish snails. I don't know what people call them overseas, but I kind of like them. They also add a little bit of variation to the design, so it's not always the same type of peppermint, and I think that helps with the overall depth of it. I'm also adding a little bit of a forest in the background, and those are just simple triangles, mainly because the foreground of the image is already too complex and you don't want to overload the detail in the eye because it might be too much, and especially if things are in the background, you can keep it kind of simple. So all I'm doing now is I'm going through and I'm painting the peppermints and just doing the colouring in, and then I might add a little bit of the red mixed with brown to do a gentle outline around them to add definition to the overall peppermint, and just a little bit of and a little bit of shadow when the peppermint is overlapping something else as well. And I'm just drawing in the sticks for the date bubbles at the moment and mixing up the type of sticks that I have. I'm also going through and just adding a few little strokes of details in the peppermint, because when you think about those lollies, I'm gonna pause for a second, because this is when Humphrey asserted his authority and said, "Mum, turn off the camera. It's time for you to play with me instead." Oh, I love him. He's so cute. So this is the time I think we should talk about when you're painting in a journal. You have to use less water because your page buckles a lot. I've mentioned this before in my watercolor tutorial, but I think the added bonus of using less water is, first off, your paints look a little bit more vibrant, and secondly, when your cat walks onto your page, you don't get paw prints just like tracking through it because your paint is dried already because you use so little of it. Pro tip. Maybe not. Anyway, I thought you guys might enjoy. I spend a lot of my time fending off Humphrey off my paintings, actually, because he knows as soon as I turn on my lights to start painting and filming, he'll just come and just sit in the middle, because he's decided that I need to stop her before she starts too long. Otherwise, no play and scratches for me for a while. With the green, I'm actually using like a blue-grey, like an indigo mixed with a phthalo green to make it a little bit more dusty and powdery. I was careful to mix the greens with a little bit of grey just to soften the look a little bit, so I didn't have that really bright clashing red and green Christmas, and more toned, a more overall toned colour that also matched in with the large amounts of browns and reds that I'm using. I'm using the Tombow Mono Eraser at the moment just to push off the masking fluid. I've been trying a few other masking fluids, but I keep on going back to this one because it just peels off so much easier. I'm using that little brush to remove the fluffs, and the problem with that is as soon as that brush comes out, Humphrey's like, "It looks exactly like my toy, I'm going to attack it." So his head keeps popping in. I always use that to attract him away from the camera if I need to as well. I'm also at the moment, now that I've removed the masking fluid, I'm just painting some of the gingerbreads, and I'm also just using a lot of dark browns just underneath the icing to add a little bit of definition. I'm just colouring in the stars at the moment because I kind of wanted to see how it was looking overall, because the big white gaps were kind of throwing me off. Didn't know if I needed to add more or not, but I think once I put the golden stars in, I realised that it looked absolutely fine. So I'm pretty happy with how that looks, and there's like an okay amount of gold there. But then I also decided that maybe I should add some fairy lights to the front of the the front of the buildings, and because I didn't mask out the lights in the past already, what I had to do instead was use the gold, because because the gold themselves is opaque, and dot in the lights, and actually that works really well because it also adds a little bit of sparkle overall to the page, and I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. What I'm doing now is I'm just going through dotting everything and then just adding a little bit of definition directly under the eaves and around some shapes to make sure that they pop a little bit more. I'm really happy with how this one looks. Actually, it's probably one of my favorite layouts that I've done this year. It's just so happy and bright. I'm just adding a few little red candies onto my gingerbread as well at the moment because I had a little bit of an accident with one of them. I accidentally made a big splodge, but it's okay. You can cover up your mistakes and make them into candy, and that is perfectly fine. So that pretty much is the spread for this week. Give you guys a quick pan. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video as well. And here's a little bit of detail so you can see a little bit of the Christmas lights and the overall image. It's a little bit big on my page, but I kind of love it. You should be toning down the work you do over Christmas anyway. It's getting to that time of the year. Anyway, I'm looking forward to speaking to you guys next week. Thanks again. Bye.